Darren O'Neill sat alone in his office, the glow of his computer screen flickering across his tired face. His fingers flipped absently through a thick stack of customer feedback reports, page after page of numbers, comments, and red flag complaints. Most of his 14 locations were holding steady, even thriving. But Store 9. Store 9 was a different story. The feedback coming from that one location was like a drumbeat of dysfunction. Incorrect orders, excessive wait times, and a level of rudeness that made customers vow never to return. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath him, and let out a heavy sigh that seemed to carry the weight of 15 years. 15 years ago, Darren was just a man with a food truck and a dream. One fryer, 2 hands, and a recipe for wings that kept people lining up around the block. He built this empire from the ground up, sweat and sacrifice baked into every corner of the business. But now, looking at the numbers and the mounting dissatisfaction, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Helpless, like his creation had outgrown him, and pieces of it were starting to slip through his fingers like sand. He rubbed his temples and muttered under his breath, "I've heard enough of this secondhand." There was a sharp edge in his voice, the frustration of a man who had always believed in leading by example. Store 9 was in another state, a product of a rapid expansion 3 years ago. He'd never met most of the staff there. They'd been hired by a district manager who rarely called unless something was on fire. At corporate, he was just Darren, no big titles, no framed portraits on the walls. It was intentional. He didn't believe in building a shrine to ego. But now that anonymity was going to serve a new purpose. 1 week later, no one recognized him when he stepped through the back door of Store 9. The Darren they knew wore suits and sat in meetings. This man wore a faded hoodie, glasses with thick rims, and a neatly trimmed beard. The name tag on his chest read Mike. He softened his voice, kept it an octave higher, and only spoke in clipped, simple phrases. He didn't need attention. He needed the truth. Rick, the store manager, barely gave him a glance. Stocky, distracted, and nursing a half-drunk energy drink. Rick muttered. "We're short again," Kayla called out. "You'll be on drive-through. Watch how Marcy runs it." Marcy didn't look up. She was thin, sharp-eyed, maybe in her early 20s, with a hoop piercing through her eyebrow that caught the fluorescent lights when she turned. "Don't slow me down," she snapped before he could speak. "I move fast. I hate repeating myself." Darren simply nodded. He'd learned long ago that observing quietly often revealed more than any confrontation ever could. He followed Marcy to the drive-thru, where the headset buzzed with constant chatter. She moved with mechanical speed, punching in orders, grabbing bags, sliding windows. But her tone, it wasn't just blunt. It was mean, hostile even. She barked at customers like they were intrusions in her day. "What do you want?" she snapped into the headset. "Yeah, well, that's not how the menu works. You want it your way, go to Burger King." Darren blinked, heart sinking. The woman at the window, mid-40s, gentle voice, tried to ask a question. "I just wanted to check if the sandwich comes with pickles." Marcy didn't even hesitate. "Lady, it's not that hard. Next time, read the board." She grabbed the cash, shoved a paper bag through the window, and turned to Darren. "Don't get any ideas. I've been here the longest. Rick doesn't care how I talk as long as I don't mess up the register." Darren felt a slow burn forming in his chest. This wasn't a fluke. This was routine. Practiced. She was used to it, and worse, she was comfortable with it. He kept his head down and his eyes open. Later that morning, a young man wearing a baseball cap came inside, face flushed, voice trembling. "Excuse me," he said gently. "The girl at the drive-thru, she made fun of my stutter." Rick didn't even look up from his phone. "You want your food remade or not?" "I just wanted some respect," the young man said, barely audible. Rick scoffed, tossing up his hand. "Marcy doesn't mean anything by it. She's just direct. That's how she is. Darren stood a few feet away, pretending to wipe down a table, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Not only did Rick know, he justified it, let it fester like mold under the tiles. But the store wasn't all rot. There were sparks of light. In the back, a teenage boy named Illy hustled between the fryer and prep table, a blur of quiet dedication. He double-checked every order, even the ones that weren't his. When an older woman dropped a tray of nuggets, he helped her silently, no jokes, no groans. And when a confused elderly man wandered in, staring at the self-serve kiosk like it was alien technology, it wasn't Marcy or Rick who helped. It was Wendy, a shift lead with crow's feet and kind eyes, who came out from the kitchen, knelt beside the man, and gently guided him through each step. "You have all day," she said with a smile. "Take your time. We're glad you're here." Marcy rolled her eyes. He could have just gone to the counter. Wendy didn't flinch, just gave the man a warm pat on the shoulder and returned to the grill. Darren watched it all, filing names away in his mind. Wendy, Illy. They were the soul of this place, holding it together despite the cracks. But the longer he stayed, the louder the tension rang. Marcy barked more aggressively by the hour. Rick stayed tuned out, and Darren felt the knot in his stomach grow tighter. By early afternoon, he took over the headset under the guise of training. Marcy handed it off with a grunt. "Just repeat the order. Don't overthink it." He pressed the button and spoke slowly. "Welcome to..." But before he could finish, a voice from the speaker cut him off. "Double bacon combo, no lettuce." The voice crackled through the headset, thick with irritation. "And don't mess it up this time. Last time you guys gave me the wrong sandwich." Darren's response was smooth, almost too calm for the tension in the customer's voice. "No problem, sir. Would you like something to drink with that? And try it, and maybe try smiling." Darren let out a quiet chuckle. "I'll do my best." But before he could repeat the order to the back, Marcy snatched the headset off his head like a parent yanking a toy from a child. "You're too soft," she snapped. "This ain't a spa. People come here, they eat, they leave." Darren looked at her. Really looked. For a moment, something in his expression faltered. The mask nearly dropped. The act almost shattered. But he held it together. Barely. "You're right," he said evenly. "I'm still learning." But inside, the ground shifted. That night, Darren didn't sleep much. He paced his hotel room in silence, replaying every word, every expression. He'd built a company rooted in kindness and efficiency. But what he saw was neglect, toxicity, and resignation. He realized then this wasn't about fast food. This was about values, the kind that get buried under profit margins if no one's watching. By morning, Darren wasn't Mike anymore. He showed up in a crisp navy polo, khaki slacks, and a pin near his collar, small, gold, barely visible, but unmistakable to anyone who worked corporate. It was the symbol of the founder. He walked through the front door of Store 9 just as the dining lights flickered on. A lone employee was mopping the soda station. Rick didn't even glance up from his back counter until Darren crossed into the kitchen. "Can I help you?" Rick asked, his tone flat, eyes doing a slow scan of Darren's attire like he was a health inspector or a supplier on the wrong schedule. "You can," Darlin replied, calm and firm. "I'm Darlin O'Neill." There was a beat of silence. Then, too, Rick blinked. "Oh, the company?" Darren nodded once. Rick's jaw tensed. His mouth opened as if to say something, then shut again. His hand unconsciously wiped itself on his apron. Darren didn't give him a chance to recover. "Get Marcy in here, now, and call Wendy. Then I want the full team in the dining room. 5 minutes." Rick hesitated, a weak excuse already forming. "They're in the middle of prep." "Then tell them to stop." "I'm not asking." 5 minutes later, the team stood awkwardly across the dining floor. Some clutched rags, others stood stiff in their aprons, unsure of what was coming. Marcy leaned against a booth, arms crossed like a fortress. Wendy stood near the back, visibly uneasy. Illy came in last, still adjusting his hairnet. Darren stood in front of them all. "I spent the last 2 days working next to you," he began, his voice clear and even. "Some of you knew me as Mike. That wasn't a random visit. I've owned this company since day one, and I don't do surprise inspections unless something's really broken." Silence. Even the hum of the soda machine felt intrusive. "This store is broken." He let the words sink in, locking eyes with each of them. "Let's start with you," he said, nodding to Marcy. She stepped forward slowly, her posture defiant but not combative, more like a soldier expecting orders, not mercy. "You've been here the longest?" 3 years, she said evenly. "In those 3 years, who taught you that mocking customers, raising your voice, and humiliating guests was acceptable?" She shifted slightly. "I didn't insult anyone. You told a guest to go to another restaurant. You rolled your eyes at an elderly man struggling to order. You laughed at a young man's stutter. I saw it, I heard it. Don't lie to me." Marcy looked away, her jaw clenched, her pride visible, but her words were gone. Darren turned to Rick. "And you knew. You excused it. You let that behavior stand, and you even defended it to a customer asking for dignity. What exactly are you managing here?" Rick swallowed hard. "We're always short-staffed. I can't lose people over every little complaint." "You're not losing people," Darren said coldly. "You're bleeding out the ones who care. Look around." He gestured at the team. "This isn't about one rude comment. It's a culture problem. It's a leadership failure, and it ends today." He motioned to a woman in a black blazer standing near the entrance. She stepped forward silently, holding a folder. "Marcy, you're being terminated effective immediately. Your behavior violated our code of ethics on multiple counts. You'll be paid for hours worked, but you're no longer part of this company." Marcy's face went crimson. Her mouth opened, but she didn't speak. She looked to Rick for help, but he was frozen. "So, that's it?" she said bitterly. "Yes," Darren replied. "That's it." She walked out without another word. Darren turned to Rick. "You're being placed on unpaid suspension, pending a full review. You've failed to maintain even basic operational standards. A regional supervisor will take over until further notice." Rick nodded numbly and walked out behind her. And then the air changed. The silence remained, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was relief. It was hope. Darren took a breath. "Let's talk about what's next." He approached Wendy. "You've been holding this place together, haven't you?" Wendy fidgeted with her sleeves. "I just try to do my job. I saw you help that customer yesterday with kindness like it cost you nothing. That's what this brand was built on. Starting today, you're the acting store manager. You'll get a raise and formal training." Her eyes widened. "Thank you. Thank you." Darren nodded, then turned to Illy. "You work harder than people twice your age. You help without being asked. Why?" Illy shrugged, eyes darting. "I just didn't want things to fall behind." "You've got a future here if you want it. Starting next week, you'll shadow the regional training team, learn leadership from the ground up." Illy looked stunned. "Yes, sir. I'd really like that." Darren stepped back and addressed the team again. "This isn't a speech, it's a reset. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to care. And starting today, you won't have to carry that weight alone." He paused, then smiled gently. "I'll be in the kitchen, not watching, working. Let's get this place back on its feet." And for the first time in a long time, there was no resistance, no sarcasm. The team moved slowly, whispers following behind them. But this time, the words weren't bitter. They were hopeful. For the first time since Darren had walked through those doors, people were talking to each other, not out of obligation, but because something unspoken had shifted. It wasn't just about Marcy being gone. It was about feeling seen, heard, like someone finally noticed they'd been trying all along. He spent the rest of the day not in an office or behind a clipboard, but shoulder to shoulder with them, grilling patties, bagging fries, calling out orders with Wendy and Illy. He didn't just fill in, he fit in. The tension that used to choke the air had started to clear. Even the customers seemed more relaxed, like they could feel the change happening behind the counter. Wendy orchestrated the kitchen like a quiet conductor, adjusting stations, checking in on the new hires, all without ever needing to raise her voice. That afternoon, a woman walked in with 3 children, 2 bouncing with energy, the youngest still clutching a half-finished juice box. One of them knocked over a cup at their table, ice scattering across the floor. Darren didn't hesitate. He grabbed a handful of napkins, crouched down, and started cleaning. "I'm sorry," the woman said, clearly embarrassed. "They're just excited." "No need to apologize." Darren smiled, wiping up the spill. "We're glad you're here." She nodded, pausing for a moment. Then her eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not usually in here, are you?" He chuckled. "Just filling in today." She studied him a beat longer. "Well, I hope you stick around. Feels different in here today." "That's the idea," Darren said, tossing the napkins in the bin. Later that evening, as the shift slowed and the air grew still, Wendy approached him near the prep table, her hands dusted with flour. "Can I ask you something?" "Always," Darren replied, wiping down his station. "You think we can really turn this around?" she asked. "It's been bad for a long time." Darren looked past her, through the kitchen's open window, where Illy was laughing with another team member while cleaning trays. "Yes," he said softly, "because people like you are still here, and I won't let that go unnoticed again." Wendy nodded once, letting the words settle like roots. Darren stayed until closing that night, sweeping, resetting stations, scrubbing pans, not because he had to, but because change only lasts if it's lived. By the end of that week, Store 9 didn't feel like a disaster zone anymore. It felt like a place trying. The chaos hadn't disappeared, but the resentment had started to lift. Wendy adjusted quickly to her new role, staying late not because she was told to, but because she refused to leave things undone. Darren remained a presence, not as the man in charge, but as the man beside them. Quiet, listening, steady. Midweek, Devin arrived from the regional office. He brought structure, audits, staffing solutions, but more importantly, he brought calm. He understood what Darren had already discovered. This wasn't a hiring issue. It was a healing issue. The systems had failed. The spirit had cracked. One afternoon, Wendy pulled Darren aside in the back hallway, her voice low. "There's someone you need to meet." She led him to the prep station, where a young woman with tight braids was placing sandwich wraps in precise, perfect rows. One earbud hung loose. "You're doing great work," Darren said gently. She looked up, surprised. "Thanks? What did you do before this?" he asked. "Hospital kitchen, Tuesday." "No love for the night shift?" he teased. She smiled faintly, then hesitated. "I had a manager who used to say people like me slowed things down." Darren waited, gave her the silence to be honest. "I'm black, I'm quiet, I don't flirt with customers, I don't talk loud." He said that made me invisible. Said I didn't bring energy to the room. Wendy's face tightened. Darren leaned in. His voice didn't rise, but it steadied like steel. "You won't hear anything like that here," he said. "Not from me, not from anyone who stays." She gave a tiny nod. "I just want to work." "That's all we ask," Darren said. "But if that ever changes, if it doesn't feel safe, You come to Wendy or Devon." As they walked away, he murmured to Wendy, "Keep an eye on her. She's going to matter." That evening, Devon found Darren by the back hallway, a file in his hands. "I've been reviewing the records. Rick was cutting corners hard. Miners past curfew, no meal breaks, forged clock-ins to make payroll cleaner." Darren didn't flinch. "Document everything. Send it all to HR. We're not just cleaning house. We're rebuilding it." Then Friday hit. One of the fryers broke down. 2-day wait for a repair. The kitchen was bottlenecked, order times doubled, and just after noon, a teenage boy in a red hoodie slammed his tray down at the counter. "I've been waiting 20 minutes. What are you even doing back there?" Billy, holding the register like a captain at sea, stayed calm. "One of our fryers is down, but I can get you a refund or a free dessert if you'd prefer." The teen sneered. "You think I want a cookie? This place is garbage." Before Illy could say another word, Darren stepped up from the back, apron dusted in flour. "Afternoon," he said evenly. The teen blinked. "You the manager or something?" "I'm the owner," Darren said plainly. "And while I can't fix a fryer with magic, you can choose how you talk to people." The room held its breath. The teen looked around, eyes on him now, then grabbed his drink and walked out, silent. Illy glanced at Darren. "I didn't want to make it worse." "You didn't," Darren said. "You handled it right." That night, the team didn't leave right after close. They lingered, cleaned slower, talked more, not because they were forced to, but because it was starting to feel like something worth staying for. Wendy leaned against the counter, sipping a soda. "I don't know how we'll cover Saturday," she sighed. "It's just me, Illy, and Brianna for the first half." Devon tapped his tablet. "I can get someone from store 5, but they won't be here before lunch." Darren drummed his fingers, then nodded. "I'll be on the grill. Devon, you take drive-through." Devon looked up. "You sure?" "I started this place flipping patties. I haven't forgotten how." Saturday came fast. By noon, the line was wrapped around the building. Illy moved like a pro, bouncing between the counter and kiosk. Brianna held the prep line down like she'd been born to do it. Wendy moved between stations with the ease of someone who finally believed she belonged there. Darren was back at the grill, hands moving with the rhythm of memory, aprons smeared in grease. Devon kept drive-through humming, headset on, voice calm. At 2 p.m., a woman in her 60s stepped to the counter, holding a bag. "There's no ketchup in here," she said, her voice tense. Billy moved to help. "I'll grab that right away." She waved him off. "It's not about the ketchup. It's about doing things right. Nobody cares anymore." Darren stepped forward, wiping his hands. Darren wiped his hands with a towel, his face calm but firm. "You're right," he said to the woman at the counter. "That's on us." She paused, caught off guard by the honesty. It wasn't defensive, wasn't deflected. It was human. "We're working on it," he added. "Some days we miss, but that doesn't mean we're okay with missing." She studied his face. There was something in the way he stood, not like a manager, not like an owner, but like someone who had stood in that line before. "You're the one who used to be on TV," she said slowly, recognition lighting behind her eyes. Briefly, Darren smiled. She gave a faint nod. "Well, don't let them turn this into just another franchise." "We won't," Darren replied. "Not on my watch." By the time the shift ended, the crew was drained, but a quiet kind of energy buzzed beneath their exhaustion. Orders had been slower than they'd liked. Mistakes had happened. But customers hadn't left angry. They had left understanding. Because what they saw behind the counter wasn't speed. It was effort. Real effort. Back near the grill, Darren wiped down the flat top, the steel hissing from its final rinse. Devon stood beside him, organizing the closing checklist. "We're not just rebuilding a store," Darren said, his voice low. "We're rebuilding trust." Devon didn't answer right away. He looked up, then toward the front of the restaurant, where Wendy was helping Brianna count inventory. "You picked the right people to keep," he finally said. The words hit deeper than Darren expected. He'd walked into store 9 thinking he'd find broken systems. What he found instead was a mirror. Somewhere in the growth, the accolades, the spreadsheets, he'd lost sight of what made this company matter. But piece by piece, he was finding it again, not through new policies or slogans, but through people. On Monday, he returned wearing the same uniform as everyone else. No pin, no clipboard, no executive badge, just a gray polo and black work pants. The message was clear. Oversight wasn't the goal anymore. Support was. The store opened right on time. Wendy cross-checked her prep list with focus while Illy ran temperature logs. Brianna had already set up her station, her hands moving with rhythm and precision. The team was still thin, still covering more ground than anyone should. But they were functioning. Barely, but functioning. Mid-morning, a new hire named Mateo stumbled. He dropped a tray of buns, then oversalted the fries. Twice. Wendy pulled him aside, her tone gentle but firm. "You're not in trouble, but I need you to ask when you're unsure. Guessing costs us time." Mateo flushed. "I just didn't want to seem like I didn't get it." "You don't have to prove anything," Wendy replied. "You just have to stay teachable." Darren had seen the whole exchange from prep. He didn't step in. He didn't need to. She handled it like a leader. No ego, no blame, just clarity. That mattered. Then noon hit. The local school had released early. By 12:15, the line stretched out the door. The ticket printers stuttered. Illy kept the register moving. Brianna's voice cracked from repeating rap codes. Wendy jumped in to assist. Darren manned the fryer, still working with only one functional unit. Then, the POS system glitched. The screen at the counter froze mid-order. "Locked," Illy said, tapping the screen. Wendy grabbed her phone, calling Devon, who was across town in a meeting. "An hour at least," he said. Darren moved fast. "It's not the terminal," he said, already ducking under the counter. "It's the network hub. Power cycle the router." "You know that off the top of your head?" Wendy asked. "I bought the first 10 myself out of savings," Darren said, crawling behind stacked paper towel boxes. He pressed the reset. The screen flickered. Orders resumed. By 2:00 p.m., the rush thinned. Brianna leaned against the prep table, rubbing her wrist. Darren handed her water. "You okay?" She nodded, but her eyes looked heavy. "Didn't think we'd get through that without catching fire." "You didn't just get through it," Darren said. "You kept it from falling apart." She looked down at her shoes. "I'm not used to being noticed." "Well," Darren smiled, "get used to it. You're not invisible here." Between shifts, he sat in the cramped break room. Just 2 chairs, a rusted locker, and a wall clock ticking 10 minutes slow. Across from him, Wendy sipped from a thermos, reviewing the weekend schedule. "You've done everything I've asked," Darren said, "but this pace isn't sustainable. We're still 2 people short for Saturday." "I've got 2 apps," Wendy replied. "One has experience, the other's brand new." "Bring in the new one," Darren said. "Better to build a good habit than break a bad one." Wendy paused. "Can I ask something?" "Sure." "You ever think about how many stores might be like this one?" Darren folded his arms. "More than I want to admit." "Then why this one? Why now?" He looked at her, then out toward the kitchen, where Illy was wiping down trays without being asked. "When someone gets the wrong order, that's a mistake. But when they get treated like they don't matter, that's a betrayal. Built this place to give people dignity, customers and employees. Somewhere along the line, I stopped checking if that was still happening. Wendy folded the schedule, stood and said, "Then let's make it true again." Just before dinner rush, Devin arrived with a new fryer in tow. He and Darren installed it together. The team let out a quiet cheer. Not the loud kind, but the kind that comes from working less against your own tools. 6 o'clock, the store ran like a song. Billy was confident. Matteo, now shadowing Brianna, had stopped second-guessing himself. Orders moved efficiently. A mother thanked Wendy for walking her tray to the table. A delivery driver complimented the speed. No one snapped. No one sighed. At closing, Darren gathered the team near the counter. "I've got something to say," he began. He turned, some still wiping hands, others leaning against tables. "I came here because I stopped trusting the reports. I needed to see the truth." He scanned the faces, tired, but listening. "I saw dysfunction, I saw hurt, but I also saw heart. People who stayed late, who helped when no one asked, who showed up when it was hard. That's rare." He turned to Wendy. "You've led without needing a title. Now you've got one. Make it count. To Illy, you've got potential. Don't rush, but don't settle." To Brianna, "Your work is quiet, but it speaks. Keep showing them what that looks like." He stepped back. "We don't have to be perfect, but we do have to be honest, with each other and with ourselves." A beat of silence. Then Wendy clapped once. Others followed. It wasn't loud, but it was steady. A promise. That night, as Darren took the trash out, he passed the same alley where, just days ago, Marcy's voice had echoed with contempt. Now all he heard was laughter from the kitchen, music playing from someone's phone. He stood for a moment in the night air. No more speeches. No more disguise. Just a man who saw the cracks and chose to stay and fill them. He opened the back door and stepped into the light. The kind that stays.